It is the same Allah who revealed his message to Noah, to Abraham, to Moses, to Jesus, to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So there's convergence that the source is one, and that explains the parallels. Does the Prophet has to teach something different from monotheistic faith that was revealed to all of the prophets? It was revealed to them and revealed also and confirmed through him. Then, even when we say the Prophet lived from other teachers, historians have failed to point out to any credible person who could have been possibly a source of that Quran, even assuming that the Prophet was not telling the truth, which is an impossible assumption. If there is such a credibility, how come people living in Arabia, which is very open, seeing that the Prophet is learning from others and repeating what others has taught him without mentioning their names and still believing him as a Prophet, and they are willing to sacrifice their life for the message that he brought to them? Furthermore, while there may be some similarities, yes, or parallels between the Quran and previous scriptures, because the source is one, you find that there are important differences. The difference is not between different revelations, but the integrity of the Quran that corrects some of the misunderstanding or misapplications or addition that were added to the previous revelation of Allah. Again, that could be a subject of several presentations if we compare the concept of sin and atonement, the story of Adam and Eve in paradise. We'll find that while there are similarities, there are also important differences, and the stories in the Quran are all consistent from A to the Z. If you were copying, all of those errors and problems could have also been copied alongside. Having rebutted all these four theories, there's only one logical and reasonable conclusion: that the Quran did not originate from any human source, whether it's the Prophet Muhammad himself, peace be upon him, or combination of other efforts of human beings. That it must be, as claimed internally and proven externally, the word of the creator of heavens and earth, Allah. Only Allah can reveal something like the Quran. But let us also conclude with a few other points that are quite interesting. First, the inimitability of the Quran. First of all, some people might say, what do you mean by the Quran being a literal miracle that nobody could imitate? Does God speak in Arabic? Well, but they don't say, does God speak in Hebrew? When the scripture that was revealed to Moses was revealed in Hebrew. It's not the matter of language. We're talking about the message of Allah. And if some humans are bilingual and multilingual, can we deny Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator, the power to communicate whatever message he wants in whatever language would be suitable for the immediate recipients of that message to carry it to other people? Some people might say, what's the relevance of that point to people who are not Arabic speaking? Well, you don't have to be an Arabic speaker to appreciate the miracle of the Quran. You depend on experts. If the experts in the English language say that Shakespeare is a masterpiece or wrote masterpieces, you accept their judgment because they are the ones who are specialized in this. By the same token, the best literal mind, even among the opponents of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and best literal minds until our days always point out to the Quran as completely unmatchable, inimitable. So these are the witness of the experts. Now, the second point to remember is that the challenge that was posed to the unbelievers at the time of the Prophet, when they said, لَوْ نَشَاءُ لَقُلْنَا مِثْلَ هَذَا, they say, if we wanted, we could say something like the Quran. The Quran called the bluff. Allah called the bluff. They say, all right, you produce something like it. See, the Quran is coming only through one man, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. But they were told, all of you together, produce something like it. They failed. Then the challenge was reduced. Produce 10 surahs or chapters like it. They failed. Then the challenge came. Produce one surah like it. And they failed. And that even happened in Mecca, when many of the surahs were very short, like some 3 or 4 lines. And they even failed to do that. And the best literal minds, the most famous of them, could not really match the beauty of the Quran. But there is something more interesting also. Their reaction, the reaction of unbelievers, who were again very eloquent, was a reaction of discouraging people. There are many instances that prove this. There are many narrations that shows that they wanted to discourage people from listening to the Quran for fear that they might be influenced by it. Yet they themselves, while trying to discredit the Prophet, they go at night in secrecy to try to listen to the Quran because they couldn't resist its beauty and attraction to them and content and wisdom. Many of the adversaries of the Prophet themselves, when they listened to the Quran, they admitted, and there are records of that, they admitted that this Quran really is unmatchable. The failure to imitate the Quran was not only limited to the people who were in their heyday of eloquence, but the challenge continued for 14 centuries without ever being matched, in spite of very feeble attempts of people who made themselves the laughing stock of anyone who knows how to distinguish between the unique style of the Quran and what they say. Furthermore, this challenge was made, like I said, for people who were best in the best of times. They were getting ample time to respond. They were getting gradual, or the challenge was gradually reduced. They were told to combine together, even jointly. They were told to bring their own judges even to see whether they have produced anything that comes close to the Quran. And then the Quran provokes them further by saying that if the human and jinn, unseen creatures, collaborate together to produce something like the Quran, they will not. And after that, they all failed, and the Quran became the yardstick upon which even grammatical rules were developed. It became the standard, the criterion, the yardstick to judge any literally Arabic work in the future. Of course, some people might say the fact that a book is very eloquent or beautiful doesn't mean necessarily that it's truthful or revelation, because a woman could be so beautiful but not necessarily pious. But this is really beside the point. If you talk about beauty in place of virtue, yes, but when beauty and virtue are combined, then the woman would be very attractive. By the same token, truthfulness and beauty of the Quran are combined, and that is even better. There are so many aspects of uniqueness that might be difficult to explain, of course, with people from various linguistic backgrounds, but very briefly, just highlights. The Quran is neither poetry nor prose, yet it has its own rhythm and rhyme with many refreshing variations. It addresses the scholar and the commoner in the same way, and appealing to both, and both can understand in different levels of understanding, which is very difficult for us as humans to write. You either write to scholars or to commoners. It addresses the mind and emotion at the same time in a very beautiful balance. It combines explicit expression with implicit and understood meanings. And finally, beside the question of inimitability, we find numerous evidences that we will not have time to elaborate on. Areas such as the scientific statements. I'm not talking about scientific theories that change from day to day, but established scientific facts that has been understood and discovered only in recent times, that has been mentioned in the Quran and stated quite clearly hundreds and hundreds of years before the scholars or the scientists were able to arrive at that. How could an unlettered man, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, 1400 years ago, come up with all of this fantastic information, some of which even relate to issues like embryology, which we understood a lot more about only in recent decades. Things like the spherical shape of Earth, the rotation of the Earth, the aquatic origin of life, the water cycle, the Gulf Stream and other similar phenomena of freshwater and saltwater mixing, the mountains as pegs, that means much deeper in their roots and only the tip of the iceberg appears, the bee dance, and many other issues that other people have written about, especially Dr. Maurice Bouquet and more recently Dr. Zakir Naik. Now, there have been also areas of discoveries that has been mentioned in the Quran, like the body of the Pharaoh of the Exodus, the city of Yubar, or the people of Aram, the Ark of Noah, and the comparison how the Bible describes it, how the Quran describes it, the lowest point on land, the use of king versus Pharaoh in the Quran to refer to Moses and Joseph, and the depth of expression But I must conclude that above all, the real testimony of the Quran is its truthfulness, lofty principle as they apply to individual and community lives. That itself would be a topic for hundreds of different presentations, but I do hope that in these brief words we have at least tried to outline in a very broad way some aspect that need to be looked at carefully about the authorship of the Quran. In fact, it took me almost 32 half-hour program just to deal with that single topic alone in some detail. And I hope that that might be useful, and I hope that Allah will open our hearts and mind to truth. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم, and may the peace, blessing and mercy of Allah be with you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.